Hi everyone, and welcome back. We have got a very complicated word and topic for today. So, there's something that I want you to think about before we get started. This is very important. When you read the Bible, you know that you are in the middle of the ancient world, right? Now, I don't want you to start off with the wrong idea about ancient people. Now, just because they didn't understand things the way we do because of science and discovery, does not mean that somehow they were dumb or mistaken. In fact, they were really smart about things and really good at making things. They were good at taking care of each other and survival. You got that? And just like us, they probably looked at the sky at night, up at the stars, wondering, where did all of this come from? Who made it? Who made us? And why? And where do we go when we die? Something we know about ancient people is that they were very closely connected to nature. We should be today. They believed that their relationship with God and nature was pretty much one and the same. So let me give you a few things to think about from the perspective of an ancient person. For example, if just the right amount of rain fell and crops grew really well, it meant that God was pleased. If children were born strong and healthy, it meant God was blessing you and your family. If your animals were strong and healthy and many new ones were being born, it meant that God was with you. The other side is not quite as good. If you had no rain, or way too much rain, and your crops failed, if you became poor or sick, and your family suffered hunger, if your animals were dying, that can only mean a couple of things. First of all, God might be upset because you did something wrong. And perhaps you did not offer God enough thanksgiving for the blessings in your life. Ancient people had a way of trying to keep things in balance. They thought it was very important to please God, and so they would give Him the very best of what they had. They called it a sacrifice. That meant that they were willing to give up things that they really couldn't afford to part with. Things like animals, crops, and personal possessions. They thought that if they gave God a portion of the very best that they had, it would prove how thankful they were, and that God would be pleased and bless them with protection and good things. So how did they do that, you might ask? Good question. I mean, we all know that God didn't just drop by and walk through the community and pick up a load of stuff and walk away with it. No. They used fire. To ancient people, fire was precious and holy. Not only did it consume things, it gave them warmth. It cooked their food. And while you were watching a fire, there was something very special about watching smoke rise up toward the sky. And so they would take crops, and they would take animals, things that were absolutely essential to living. They would slaughter the animals, but instead of eating them, they would place them on a sacred fire and burn them as a sacrifice to God. Somehow they felt that smoke rising to heaven would reach God, and God would be pleased. Now, connected to that way of thinking, there's another important practice that you must hear about. It is called atonement, or making atonement. It means paying for something that you have done to someone else that was wrong. If someone did something wrong, there was a great fear that God would get angry. And not just at the person who did it, but at the person's family, or the village, or even the whole tribe. For that reason, there were laws put into place, many, many laws. And if you broke one, you were in trouble and you had to pay. People who broke the law could be severely punished. They might lose a lot of their personal possessions, their animals or their crops, their family, and even be put to death. That person would be required to do ritual things like washing themselves, paying back the person they hurt, perhaps taking something very important that they owned, like an animal, as I said, or food or possessions, and bring them to a priest. And that priest would then offer these things as a sacrifice to God. That meant you were atoning or paying the price for your sins. As I said, nations were very careful about not upsetting God. So once a year, on a special day, they called this gathering of people, and they referred to it as the Day of Atonement. People would gather together and say lots of prayers of confession. They would ask for forgiveness, and they would make all kinds of sacrifices to God. And in a special ceremony, as things were quietening down, the religious leader would take 2 goats. One goat would be killed and sacrificed on the fire. The other goat would be taken, and the priest would place his hands on the head of the other goat, say a prayer that transferred the sins of the people into the animal. That poor animal was then driven into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Now that you understand how the people felt, we can begin to talk about how Jesus became the one who took the sins of the people away from us forever.